And nothing from a service provider point of view has helped us more than case studies. Once we figured that out, we put in so much effort into getting case studies written because someone's going to spend as much as a car on a project. They want to be confident.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Scale a Business podcast. My name is Hector Santiesteban and I am your host. Our special guest today is Mr. Kurt Elster, and he's a Shopify expert and someone who is, I was doing some research and Gemini says that you are the unofficial mayor of Shopify. So
Wow.
welcome Kurt to the show.
Yeah, the unofficial mayor, I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Hector, thanks for having me, man.
So I'm like, what does the official mayor think about Kurt? And, so.
I was going to say official mayor. I'm going to assume that's Shopify president Harley. We're on good terms. He's a cool guy.
That's funny. Well, yes, I'd imagine that in doing all, how much good that you've done for them, I hopefully they are appreciative. I'd love to get into some of the general tactics and whether listeners, you have an e-commerce store or not. This is going to be a helpful episode just because we're going to talk more broadly about how to make any sort of business successful. But I'm curious, what were some of the key stops along the way that sort of led you to becoming I'm thinking about like the mayor of Whoville. Recently, my kids watched The Grinch, and so I'm thinking like you're sort of the mayor of these band of misfits of Shopify owners that are sort of taking over the world. How did that come to be?
Man, well, so my entire adult life, I'm 42 now, I have always worked in e-commerce. 2009, recession rolls around, and I don't know what I don't know. There's a lot of effort or a lot of advantage to ignorance when you're starting a business. And I foolishly went, I'll start an e-commerce platform for bike shops. I had no business doing this. I just didn't have the experience and started building. But we were able to rent office space because middle of recession, it was like I was able to get it for free with deferred payments. I just took this office space. I had to pay a lease. And so I started selling WordPress sites and doing web design just to cover that when this, other business just wasn't working. And, all of that was a blessing in disguise because, suddenly now a few people start to know, oh, like this guy knows web design and websites. And then a friend who owned a local bike shop goes, well, I hate my site. Just want something easy. Help. And I said, well, I heard of this thing called Shopify. Let's just try it. Again, just total like the ignorance. I'm like, I'll just try it. And then on top of it we'll build a custom theme for it. A thing I'd never done before. We'll just do it. And it wasn't that hard. And that got us, and it was very early on the platform. And that got us noticed. They said, well, we got this thing called an experts directory. And you built a custom theme. Clearly, you know it. You should just join. Okay. First lead we get from it is Bandon Dunes Golf Course in Oregon. It's a big deal. And so from there, it just kept going like that. Where it's like, all right, after a year or two of that, I said, wait, let's just only do Shopify. And if we're going to only do Shopify, we need a way to get inbound leads. Because prior to that, I'm like sending people letters and postcards and calling them and sending emails. And I hated it. Cold outreach is painful. For some people, I didn't like it. Once we're there and just kept going, it was just really about the consistency and showing up. But as part of those inbound leads, I'm like, man, we'll start a podcast. And I was not creative enough to figure out a title. I said, well, working title is Unofficial Shopify Podcast. And we just never changed it. And we got lucky that, we did a good enough job that they both took notice and decided to let us continue with that.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it was a no-brainer or what that was like in order to say that we're going to put all of our eggs in sort of the Shopify basket. And now today that seems like a no-brainer because Shopify is what it is. But I'm wondering if back then, what went into your consideration for how you were going to position the future of this business that you had, sort of started.
It wasn't something I rushed into. I would love to say that I knew and I just dropped it. And we went for it. And for sure, there's, on timing, there's some luck there. I absolutely acknowledge that I happened to hitch my cart to the right horse at the right time. But, what I did, and would be harder to do today, we had a landing page that we knew worked, and we were able to just buy Google ads and send traffic to this landing page to generate leads and do like these little web development projects. And so I took that once I had a landing page that worked, I duplicated it and only changed the platform. And there were a lot of e-commerce platforms that you would consider at that time. And so we ended up working on all of these, half a dozen different platforms. And Shopify was the one that we went, well, that was easy at the end. And it was because it was easy, but it was also well documented. And they had this ecosystem that's starting to develop around it. And so that was the thing that I went, yeah, like let's stick, this is the one. Why are we even doing anything else? Because like this one feels easier by comparison. And so we just ran with that. And then we're evangelizing for it and they're investing in that community. And so the timing worked out really well.
And so it's sort of a testament to either experimentation or, at least being a generalist for a time period and then sort of picking your focus because, it sort of
First,
allowed you to
yeah,
have the data there.
early on, that the big unlock, was going from generalist to specialist. And then what's kind of funny about it is like generalist was web developer and specializing was Shopify. Well, now today, being a Shopify partner, I don't know that that's necessarily a specialty anymore. It's more specialized, but not quite a specialty, right? Like you would want to do, like pick a niche within that. For us, we do a lot of work with aftermarket automotive, and it works because I came from that industry. I have that experience, and I know cars, and so it's just kind of a natural thing to layer on top of it. But yeah, sort of like adding, specialty plus vertical or like specialty plus outcome, you can make a more specialized niche for yourself in a space you're already in. That was the first unlock many years ago was, hey, you got to niche down.
Talk to me about how you decided on your business model because you have I'm curious about what it actually is because I can make some assumptions, but I would
Right.
imagine that I don't even know what you decided to go to just because in the way that you are in a unique position of being a service provider and then also in a space like e-commerce where, so much of it is product driven. How did you go about deciding on the business model that, you have for today?
Well, absolutely. With agency pricing, that's the other weird thing you got to figure out. Like first was figure out positioning and that specialization. And truthfully, it took me years to figure that out. And then, okay, figure out pricing. And, I think the magic there is that I wanted to do everything fixed price, fixed scope upfront. So essentially project pricing as opposed to, well, hey, here's an estimate and here's our hourly rate. And then some of these agencies you get into, well, they're like, well, we charge different hourly rates. And like, it could be quite intimidating where you don't know what you're paying for. No one likes that experience. You hire a contractor, hire a plumber. Well, I think it'll be this. Oh, you think? I don't want it. You could really defang the risk from that purchasing for your customer if they know it will cost me exactly this and not more, and I am going to get exactly this. And so I think that project pricing, fixed price, fixed outcome, very beneficial, but you have to experiment with it to where it makes sense where it's like, okay, the effective hourly rate is, everybody's happy with it and the client's getting the value out of it. But then, the agency is also being profitable on it. And that just takes experience and some effort.
Yeah, I think it's a good point in the sense of you're going to have to experiment a little bit and it's going to take some iteration to find the sort. And I would imagine that, in our instances, we err on the side of, oh, we're losing money or we're giving away too much money. We need to tighten up the margins. And so there's ways to go about that by, adjusting pricing or obviously adjusting scope. When you look at the evolutions of your business, were there sort of, you talked about going from a generalist to a specialist and sort of once you've made these, maybe they fall in line with that, but were there other evolutions of the business that came along and what were perhaps some of the turning points that sort of took you from stage to stage?
I mean, initially was just the first pivot was discovering, hey, I'm absolutely unable to validate and get off the ground an e-commerce platform. Like just move on, discover, oh, I could be a service provider and that works well. The first time I wrote a proposal for $7,000 for a WordPress site, I was like, could this even be legal? I just couldn't believe it, right? It's a strange thing to wrap your head around. And from there, I thought, well, how do you expand that? And so I went upstream to other agencies. The advantage to that was we were able to get big names in our portfolio. Suddenly it's like you're a nobody, but because you're working on behalf of another agency who in their agreement let you use the names, you could say, oh, we did development for like Hilton Hotels. And so getting that, the next step is for a service provider anyway, is like establish that credibility because no one knows who you are. You may know that you've got the skills, but nobody else does. And then finding that niche, that specialization, doing that, finding content marketing that worked. For me, a podcast made sense. It worked. Like I was able to adapt to it. I already had experience as a guest on podcasts. And so running our own and my business partner at the time, they had experience editing podcasts, which, in the early 2000s, there's not that many people who did then. Now, much more common and much easier. But like that content marketing, really made a big difference. Project pricing, for sure, switching. And then, more recently, especially in like a services business, any business, cash flow is king. If you can get, if you could sell retainers and sell clients on, fixed monthly recurring retainers, that really smooths out cash flow. If you can add any kind of subscription component or recurring revenue component to a business, huge, big unlock there. It really, and that also helps give you, when you have that recurring cash flow, gives you the confidence on, being able to hire full-time employees. So yeah, that helped a lot. And then marketing wise, it's been 10 plus years. You still have to defend yourself. You still have to prove like that you are capable. There's still people who are discovering you for the first time. And nothing from a service provider point of view has helped us more than case studies. Once we figure that out, we put in so much effort into getting case studies written because they really, someone's going to spend as much as a car on a project. They want to be confident.
Yeah. It's such a great reminder that, and I'm glad you talked about the distinction as being a service provider, because that's so relatable regardless of industry and regardless of what people are building or creating. Some of these pivots or positionings are so important. What about the team? How did that develop for you? Was that something that did you sort of do everything in-house, or did you guys contract a lot, or how has that evolved as you guys have grown?
Well, we started with, I had a business partner. I liked having a business partner. Not everybody likes having partners. I do. I think it adds an air or an element of accountability. And it's difficult to work in a silo, I think, for me anyway. And so I had a business partner, but those partner relationships, it's very much like being in a sexless marriage, and it didn't work out. And I ended up having to buy the guy out. And that's one of those things, like it is like a divorce. It's tough, or any breakup. It's difficult. It hurts. And when it's done, you wish you'd done it sooner. That's how you know it's the right thing to do. Like you're like, wow, should have done that 6 months ago. Yeah. I wish I had, but it didn't slow me down. They had another business partner lined up, and he was my lead developer, and to this day still is. I ended up from there. I wanted to reduce risk because I didn't have that recurring revenue yet from retainers, hadn't figured that piece out. And so I just really leaned on contractors, use contractors. You can get really experienced people, scale up and down very easily. For a project-based or agency business, contractors are really, a natural fit for it. But with growth, over time, if you have someone who's great and you work well, why not give them that opportunity and make them full-time and part of the team? And so that's ended up adding, and now we have a mix of W-2 and contractors.
Yeah, it's really amazing what is possible and the type of talent that's available for service providers who, especially ones that can be remote based. And I think that the most can be. And so when people sort of open up their eyes to the talent that's sort of around, I think a lot of opportunities open for them. Kurt, when we get back from break, I want to ask a little bit more about the tech and the trends and the new things that are happening in your world, because things are moving so fast, and I would love to get the scoop. So we're going to get into that right after this quick break. Hey, y'all, today's episode is brought to you by Amplify Media, and we are a podcast and content production company. Well, we like to think of ourselves as like the fractional media part of your company, because chances are, if you're listening to this, you probably have a product, a passion, a mission, a message, some sort of service you're trying to get out to the world. If that's the case, we can help. Go to amplifymedia.com. That's AMPLAFY media.com. You can also check the show notes for the link. And with that, let's back to Kurt. So, Kurt, I'd love for you to take this wherever you'd like, but things are happening so quickly with regards to AI and tech and the sort of things that are possible with technology these days. What have you been most surprised with regards to over the last, little bit when it comes to those sort of things, and how have you seen the industry evolving?
I think the thing that has surprised me is the general backlash against AI. Because from where I'm sitting, I'm surrounded by developers, I'm surrounded by tech bros on Twitter, like that kind of thing, where everyone is using and very excited about these generative AI tools. Because, if fundamentally, I spend most of my day in front of a screen on a keyboard. Well, that kind of work can really be augmented by AI. Just being able to have, ChatGPT proofread stuff for you. Once you figure that out, you really run with it from there. The backlash against AI has been interesting. Seems to be, people who don't have a ton of experience with it or had like early bad experiences with it. And so you could get if you say like, hey, I used AI to make this thing, you can get a negative reaction to it. But then you present the same thing where you don't say it's generated by AI. And as long as it is either both very obvious that it is AI or not at all obvious, they'll be fine with it. It's that middle ground where you're like, I think this is AI, but I don't know. That's where people get mad about the stuff. That's where especially like video, photo content that you see on like Instagram and TikTok. You just look at the comments, they get heated. But no, I think it's kind of interesting. I think this year we're going to see people really appreciate and prefer, or at least say they do, stuff, actual like artisan things made by people or meant to look that way. But with AI, man, I'm so excited about the productivity that those tools represent and the ability to move through and analyze data or like quickly synthesize things or automate tasks has been really powerful. For us, development work, coding, like absolutely AI has come so far and is able to code really well. It's quite shocking the stuff it could do and the stuff you could turn out now. Certainly like writing, it's good, but I think that's where people get themselves into trouble where it's like suddenly you don't set tone of voice, you don't copy edit it. It looks like AI and that could be a little annoying for folks. I know I keep going. I can riff for 20 minutes like that.
Well, it's a great reminder that, there's this new, I would imagine for a lot of people, it's a new term called vibe coding. I know it's not
Vibe
very
coding.
new, but it really takes the barrier of entry to programming and developing. It takes it away, and
Yeah.
if you've got on Gemini, you can type in, a couple of prompts and you've got a video game or you've got whatever. And so I think that a lot of business owners could sort of wake up to that. And then what's next and what's possible after that, is really only limited by the needs of their customers and sort of the aspirations of their business, because things just got a lot cheaper and easier. I would imagine, as a service provider, there's a similar like timeline where you've had to adjust because of AI. And, in our sort of world in media production, I thought we had a longer runway before AI sort of chewed up a lot of our industry. But it's just so easy to do so many things with tools that are much less expensive than, paying for an agency. Have you felt the need to adjust at all because of AI, or are there things that you guys have done as it's sort of, taken hold amongst most industries?
Early on, I maybe felt that way that like, okay, if we don't stay up with this, we'll get left behind. But they are such easy tools to use. And then when you're already in, this very like tech environment, adding these tools, you're the target audience. And so they've not been tough for us to learn, adapt to, and add to our workflows because I think we're the target market, right? Like a lot of developers. And no, it's been fun, to try the tools and learn. Early on, it was a lot about like, I would just try to break them. New technology, new tools, new features. I won't feel that I understand it and know its limitations until I could break it. Right? If I could break it, then I'm like, okay, this is where it falls apart. So this is what not to do. And now we can learn how to really use it well. And by taking that approach early on, those AI tools were not that smart. They were easy to break, easy to confuse, easy to mess up. Over time, they've just gotten way better. And, for us, it's like when it scared me was when the guy who would just transcribe our podcast just quit. He goes, look, writing's on the wall. This is over. But there really were no good AI tools at the time to make that work. Now today, a free piece of software called Whisper, I just give it an MP3 link. I don't even do anything more than that. And it transcribes the whole thing perfectly. And then also separates out by who's speaking off one file. That's incredible. And then you have to pay for the thing. It runs locally on my computer. 2 years ago, that didn't work. Now it works. So that guy, he was right that his job would go away because of AI. And it did. We're able to clean up guest audio. I love podcasting with you. You've got a great setup, same mic as me. Most people don't. They've got AirPods and they're going to record next to their furnace in a warehouse, right? Like something crazy. There's an AI tool called Adobe Enhance. It can take out room echo. I can take out all of that. It's crazy. It's really good. Sometimes it's too good. People sound like a little robotic. And same with like video tools and then, of course, writing tools. I think that's where people get themselves in trouble. It's just like having it write blog posts for them, having it write emails that don't sound like them. That's what annoys people. It's like, okay, it comes across as inauthentic and fake. Last year, authenticity, that was a buzzword, right? But I think it was like in reaction to all this fake content being created by AI, influencers feeling fake suddenly, everybody kind of wising up to the thing. And so with that AI content, it's got to sound like you at the end of the day, or you're just going to annoy people.
The term AI slop is
AI
a
slop.
fitting term. And I think there's a lot of businesses who are afraid of putting that out, rightfully so. And then they don't really learn the right way to do it, though. They don't really leverage it. It's like, I'd imagine it's like, builders who, cranes came around and they go, I don't want to use a crane. It's like, it might be worth looking into that, because there's just a new, amount of leverage, right? I think Naval Ravikant, he has his 4, points of leverage. I think he might have to add another one when it comes to AI, because I think it just creates that sort of speed. Kurt, I got a couple more questions for you. Well, 2 more questions. The first is, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to find out about the show, find out about what you guys do with your agency, where's the best place for people to go?
Oh, Google me, Kurt Elster, kurtelster.com. I've got links to everything there. The Unofficial Shopify podcast is my show, and our agency service business is ethercycle.com, like Ethernet and bicycle.
Apparently, I was in my research, it was saying that you guys had a chance to work on Jay Leno's
Leno's Garage, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating. It seems like he's sort of a transcendent character, a little bit. And so you mentioned that your being in the, knowing cars and such like that was sort of the connection there, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I got lucky. They invited me out there. I got to tour his garage, 200 cars, 200 motorcycles, and met the man many years ago now. But yeah, perfectly nice guy, very nice. And when I saw him, he looked like him. He's wearing like the full Canadian denim tuxedo. He just got his hair cut. I did not realize he's like 6'3", and absolutely my brain went blank. I had this like high, I'd even like practiced so that that wouldn't happen. No such luck.
No judgment there. I would imagine so. It's sort of he's a big character. Last question, Kurt. In your opinion, what is the secret to scaling a business?
I think the thing that everyone is missing is knowing your numbers. If you're like, why can't I scale this? It's probably because you're not confident in if you can afford to scale it and how you could scale it, and what the right lever is that is going to add additional revenue to the business. The other one that sounds silly is people will say they're bad at goal setting. So they'll say, oh, my New Year's resolution, my goal, I'm going to scale my business. That's way too fuzzy. If you're like, hey, I want to get to $1 million a year, okay, divide by 12, and now you have a revenue goal for the month, or divide by 365. Now you have a daily revenue goal to hit. Yeah. So knowing your numbers and then setting realistic goals, okay, that helps you get there, because now you could quantify, I am or am not on track to hit my goal, and then what has to change.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank all of you listeners for sticking around and hanging out with us today. If you're not following wherever you're listening, please hit that follow button. Go check out Kurt and his show as well. And if you guys want to connect with me, you can go and find me on LinkedIn, Hector Santiesteban. As always, we appreciate being here. We'll see you on the next one. Later, y'all.